What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I'm finally back. Yes, that's it. We're here with the highly anticipated, much awaited, long awaited even, Ask Me Anything. You guys might remember a little while ago I put up a little video saying how I was unhappy with how some other YouTubers treat their fans. Specifically, they would charge them money just to ask them questions and actually get them answered. And you know, I said, fuck that. That's not how I roll. I'm doing all of this stuff completely free. Ask your question regarding whatever topic, whatever subject, and there's about 99% chance I will answer that topic or question. There was obviously one or two personal things that would have been off limits. That's why I said 99%. But here we are anyway. We're back with all of these good questions. So before we get into all of them, they're going to be answered in no particular order. And I just want to take a second to thank absolutely every single one of you who watched this video, whether you're a fan or not, whether you're a subscriber or not, or whether you're going to be a subscriber by the end of this video. Hint, hint. If you left a question or if you didn't leave a question, again, thank every single one of you. Now, let's get to them questions. So first up, Nugget, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, asks, will I be making different content besides gaming content in the near future? I would absolutely love to. The problem is a lot of my other hobbies don't translate to video format well, and they don't really translate to even a almost vlog rambly style video well at all. I've posted one or two other videos related to non-gaming stuff before. They're very few and far between, to be honest, but a lot of my hobbies not only wouldn't translate over well, but they're not consistent enough. For example, I play one or two tabletop games, but you can't really do much about that by yourself, and the situations where I'm in a position to actually do it are extremely infrequent. Now, having said all that, maybe there's something that I'm not even thinking of. Let me know in the comments of this video. What kind of stuff would you like to see that maybe I'm just overlooking or not thinking of at all? Maybe there's something that just never occurred to me that could easily be done, or even with a little bit of effort I could actually get it done. Because I'd like to diversify just a little bit with my other hobbies and whatever. The problem is I have a lot of stuff to do in regards to, say, you know, maybe anime or movies or TV shows or just other real life stuff, but none of it is really consistent enough for me to do it. I would love to, but let me know in the comment section and I'll see what I can do. So next up, we've got a pretty interesting tech question. Comes across as tech and gaming from Arcadox, at least that's how I believe it's pronounced. So he asks, what would your thoughts be on a new company startup, meaning a not currently existing company, that was able to create quality first party titles and also bring out a more powerful hybrid device that had better battery life, online features, better storage, and charges very fast? Would you be interested in supporting such a company, or would it be overlooked just because they are a new company? I don't know about everybody else, but I'm tired of these companies. With Nintendo's underpowered hardware and lack of knowledge of modern technology, Sony's third-person insert game genre here, and Microsoft's lack of exclusives that don't warrant a purchase of their hardware. What about a company that incorporated Nintendo's game design, Sony's graphic technologies, and Microsoft technologies all in one powerful hybrid device? Think Xbox Scorpio, but Switch, kinda. That would be the future in my opinion. Okay, so my thoughts on this. It's a very, very tricky question. First off, we're not, unfortunately, we are not at a point, technologically speaking, that we could do all of this. For the simple reason, if you had an Xbox One Scorpio and you put it on some sort of power battery life, a mobile battery, you would be dead in minutes. Your battery would just be absolutely dead in minutes, if even that long. But let's assume, technologically speaking, that everything we have at the moment is still current, like the PS4 Pro, the Xbox One X, the GTX 1070s and 1080s. Let's assume that's all still current when we're at a technological level to do this. When it comes to, say, battery life and heat dissipation and whatever. If a company could absolutely demonstrate 100% without a shadow of a doubt that they could make top quality Nintendo level first party games and first party exclusives. For example, if they could show off maybe 6 brand new games, obviously they'd be brand new because they're just a completely startup company, from 6 different IPs and 6 different genres of game, and they were top quality ones, people would definitely be interested. And if they could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they would get 99% of AAA third-party support, then people would definitely be interested. For the simple reason is that that's a big part of people's perception of consoles. Look at the Nintendo Wii U. Everybody knew that console had no third-party support whatsoever. Even to this day, there are a lot of people who still doubt Nintendo and the Switch, rightfully so to a point, when they doubt the third-party support that Nintendo was having. Think about that for a second. Nintendo, the big N, who basically started gaming for what's probably the majority of people, are being questioned and doubted on their third-party support. So a brand new startup company would have a very, very big task ahead of them to prove they could have all this and it would be supported going forward. Because a lot of people, when it comes down to it, a lot of people are already wary of new consoles or new manufacturers. How many times have we seen something, it's like, oh yeah, it's brand new, cool, revolutionary new thing, it's called the Atari box, and we all know how that's going to completely be destroyed. And you've got the Ouya, promises the world, flops. Throughout the years, there's all these companies that made like one console and then never again, looking to use stuff like the Panasonic 3DO, the Philips CDI. You see my point. People are very, very wary about this kind of stuff. But if they could do all of that, if they could convince absolutely everyone that they have 99% support on third-party games, they have top quality, varied, different genre, different IPs of first-party games with high-end hardware and graphics, good battery life, proper storage, and charges pretty fast, I would definitely keep my eye on it. With all those things, it goes above my minimum baseline of interest. So at that point, I'd be more inclined to go towards it. The only thing I will say is about everything we just covered, the company that would try to do that have an absolutely monumental fight ahead of them if they were trying to set up like that. But it will be extremely interesting to see. So Ampera Syndicated Media asks my thoughts on the Pentium D. Now Amp is obviously a retro computer enthusiast, arguably more so than myself, since mine is mostly focused on consoles. But as far as the Pentium D goes, it's a decent chip, arguably a little bit better than decent. The power and performance you get out of it when it came out relative to everything else, as well as the price, was a pretty decent chip. Now yes, it could be heavily overclocked to be better than other chips, but at the same time you could buy a better chip as it is and then overclock that and end up even better. And especially nowadays, considering that retro PC hardware prices are absolutely all over the place, it's a really tricky situation. It would all depend on what you're trying to build, what you're trying to, not specifically just the computer, but also the rest of the parts you're trying to use in there, and the price you can get all of the above for. I mean, some days you could probably get this stuff dirt cheap, some days you could probably get something better even cheaper, but it is what it is. So, Jack Stavris asks,
are you a functional retard? I have to ask.
Well, I'll let you guys decide on that one for yourself. And by the way, people, don't take offense to that. It's an inside joke. Would you consider the Xbox One X a better value than a similarly priced PC, considering the GPU market right now? Absolutely. For those of you out there who aren't aware of it, the GPU market at the moment is completely all over the place. With the whole Bitcoin and cryptocurrency farming and all, and how efficient that modern graphics cards are for doing that, the price and availability of them has skyrocketed. Or should I say the price has skyrocketed, the availability of them has kind of tanked. So naturally the Xbox One X, something that's widely available for €500, offers pretty good performance. I mean, yeah, it doesn't offer high-end performance. It doesn't offer what Microsoft said it's going to offer. You're not going to get your true 4K uncompromised 60 frames per second. But overall, it still offers a pretty good proposition. And I'll go one step even further. There's a lot of people out there spreading all sorts of misinformation at the moment that's saying, oh, you can get a computer that outperforms the Xbox One X for €500 or for €550 for €600. The fact is, and this is coming from a guy who spends too much time, frankly, looking into PC hardware and PC parts and has an extremely high-end PC, that unless you come across someone trying to sell a GTX 1080 Founders Edition on eBay for €100 just because he needs money fast, you are not building a computer that has similar performance to an Xbox One X for the same kind of price. Maybe €700 if you get lucky, but you're probably pushing closer to $1,000. Of course, the Xbox One X, like I said, it's not perfect. You're limited to the console space. You're limited to basically what Microsoft and other companies say, paying to play online, etc, etc. And of course, being the Microsoft console, you're kind of limited when it comes to third-party support to an extent. Not as bad as the Nintendo Switch side, but you're not going to get all those games that you'll get on a PC or a PlayStation. So next up, we've got two questions from Scribe86. They're both 2 Shenmue related questions. The first one is how many times have you completed Shenmue 1 and 2 and which do you prefer out of the 2? And the second question is, what are your thoughts on the lack of updates from Wise.net in recent months for Shenmue 3? So I'll answer these separately anyway. So the first one, which was how many times have I completed Shenmue 1 and 2 and which do I prefer out of the 2? I've definitely completed Shenmue 1 at least 3 times. I finished it once back in the day, the first time I played it. I believe I finished it once several years later again. And then I finished it last year in 2016. So I've definitely finished it at least 3 times, but that could be 4, maybe 5. For some reason I think I finished it at least once more way back in the day, and another time randomly throughout the years. But I could be mistaken. So for the sake of transparency, or we'll just call it accuracy, 3 times definitely, possibly up to 5. As for Shenmue 2, it's a little bit more tricky to an extent. I played it once back in the day when it first came out, played it for a significant amount of time. I still remember playing almost the entire game, but I can't remember 100% if I finished it. Now, I'm sure people understand that, I mean, it was 16, well, at this point, even 17-ish, well, was it 16 or 17? 2001, I believe, so really about 16 years ago. So I'm sure you can forgive me for not 100% remembering it, but I have definitely completed Shenmue 2 at least once. Last August in 2016, I did a Shenmue 1 and 2 playthrough back to back. Played no other games over the course of about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, and I literally just played through Shenmue 1 and 2. And definitely completed them. So for the sake of it, I will say I completed Shenmue 2 once, with a possibility of twice. And which do I prefer of the 2? Well, I prefer Shenmue 1 for about 98% of what it does, in comparison to Shenmue 2. Shenmue 1 gave us the characters, it gave us the story, it even gave us a little bit of a hint of the backstory. It set the scene, the tone, the style of game and gameplay it was, because at the time there was basically nothing like it. And there was few enough areas, there wasn't too few, but there wasn't too many. There was a decent amount of areas, that all the systems that were introduced, it wasn't completely overwhelming, and it wasn't spread too thin. Something I can't really fault Shenmue 2 for, it was bigger in scope, as it should have been, but Shenmue 1 felt like it kept a proper pace the entire way through. However, having said that, there is 1 or 2 things that Shenmue 2 actually did a little bit better. Specifically, if you've played the Dreamcast version of Shenmue 2, it's easier to explain, because it's basically the entirety of Disc 4. I won't go into the details of everything in this video about what Disc 4 actually is, but it's essentially one long narrative experience and just a narrative plot device across the entire disc, and it works fantastically. It is an absolutely masterpiece of plot progression. So yeah, there are 1 or 2 things that Shenmue 2 does do slightly better than Shenmue 1. But like I said at the start of this question, or the start of this answer, about 98% I prefer Shenmue 1 over 2. The second question was, what are your thoughts for the lack of updates when it comes to Wise.net in recent months for Shenmue 3? I completely understand this basically. So if you don't remember, I think it was maybe in May of 2017. It might have been a little bit earlier. For some reason, I'm remembering it's in around the March, April, May area, but I want to say it was the start of May. They had actually just officially announced they finished pre-production and went into full game production. So naturally, now that they're fully knuckling down, developing the entire game, not just running over not just one or two of the extras. I don't want to make light of what they're doing, but they're into, at this point for several months, the full-on proper game development cycle. So it does feel like, yes, the Kickstarter updates have gotten kind of lighter in what they actually include in it, and it never seems to be huge, big, important stuff just yet. But we have so many different game expos and so many different conferences and all these days that even if, sure, we probably get 1 a month, maybe even 1 every 2 months. But if I have to wait maybe 2, 3, or even 4 months to get a proper big bit of info, a proper big reveal, or big teaser, big show off, big whatever it is, big update basically, I completely understand, because this game is scheduled to come out at the end of 2018, and now that they're in full on production mode, I completely understand that they're knuckling down, they're going straight into the full game development, and to an extent that this can kind of fall by the wayside for a little bit. I wouldn't like to see the Kickstarter updates and just the general updates just fall to the wayside completely, because at the end of the day, we did help this game become what it is. We essentially funded and paid for this game, so it would be nice to keep us in the loop, even somewhat. I just want to see a little bit more of it, to be completely honest. That, and hopefully in the meantime, we can get the Shenmue HD collection. Come on, Sega, you know you want to. And I'm just inserting this extra little bit about the Kickstarter updates and whatnot for Shenmue 3, because a day or two after I actually recorded those specific questions, the latest Kickstarter update came out, and they had specifically addressed this in their actual update. So here's what it says anyway, that concerning future updates, Deep Silver and Wise.net are moving forward with a promotional planning that will encompass the whole of the project. Due to these adjustments, there will be an increase in instances where there will not be an update each and every month. However, we are also looking into other media and events besides updates to give you a better experience as we roll out latest information, so please stay tuned. The next Dev Room report is in the works, so please look forward to that too. Thank you all for your continued support. So like I said in the actual answer, it makes perfect sense that between the whole full-on development cycle as well as now the actual proper publisher driven marketing drive and marketing cycle and whatever, it makes sense that it's going to be kind of limited and held back just so that they can give out proper full marketing and full updates, even though there will be one or two little extra Kickstarter updates here or there. Just don't expect them to be anywhere as near as substantial as they were previously, or just really in general. So Pink Rudy asks, do I know any other languages other than English? And do I play games with Japanese voice acting and stuff? So first off, yes and no if I know any other languages than English. That's kind of a weird answer to say yes and no, but I'll explain it now. So obviously my main language is English, but we actually have an Irish language over here. They teach it to you in school the entire time, and I've taken it for about 15 years in school. However, it's got no practical use outside of school, or outside of one or two very, very, very specialist things specifically involving the language. And I've really never used it over the last, I don't know, maybe 13 years. So at this point, I remember various words, just kind of random words, and I can string very basic sentences together. I also technically took French in school for only 3 years, but again, 3 years, you don't use it, you lose it. That's how it works. Random words and string very basic sentences together. Knowing what I know now in life though, I really should have learned German back in school. There was a choice between French and German, and a huge amount of my life has had a huge amount of moments where German would have came in exceptionally handy, and I should have learned that. I'd also learned to love Japanese, but wow, is it supposed to be impossible to learn. Not impossible, but supposed to be extremely difficult. And do I ever play games with Japanese voice acting? I used to be a die-hard Japanese voice acting only guy. But as I got more and more into not just the convention scene, but voice actors and what they do, you do lose a little bit of it in translation, not just because of what they changed for the English version versus the Japanese version, but because English is my main language. You lose stuff like inflections and emotions and things like that are much easier to discern in your native language. So overall, it comes down to a couple of things: the type of game it is, the type of characters, and the actual voice cast themselves. For example, if you play any of the Persona games whatsoever, all the individual characters in there, they're so unbelievably different and individual with their own personalities and absolutely everything about them that I cannot fathom playing any Persona game in a language other than English, because every character is so well defined. Because I can tell that in my native language, it just gives them a complete sense of individuality and character, something that is kind of lost a little bit if I listen to it in, say, Japanese. Of course, there are other games that will be played in Japanese the entire time, so basically it's a very selective process. It all comes down to the game, the type of game, the genre, and the voice cast, basically. Although when it comes to actual anime, I'd say about 98% of anime is Japanese with English subtitles. There's a few exceptions, but that's it for the most part. So, next up, Paddy G asks, what console do you play? Now, there's two answers to this. There's a short answer and a long answer. Short answer is all of them. Long answer is, even though you asked about consoles, I will say this real quick. I primarily game on PC if I have the choice. For example, some games don't come to PC, some only come to PlayStation, some technically will, just for argument's sake, only come to Xbox, some only come to Switch. But if a game comes out on all platforms, I'll buy it on the PC. Now, if a game only comes out on consoles, previously, I would have bought it on PS4. For the simple reason is the PS4 version would have been the best performing version of all of those consoles and all of those games. I can't believe I'm going to use this as an example, but a couple of years ago when Destiny 1 first came out, I bought it on PS4 because it was the best performing version of the game. That of course may flip all on its head right now as it is, because with the Xbox One X being more powerful than the PS4 Pro, unless the developers are just completely sloppy, in theory everything should perform better on Xbox One X. So going forward, now that I have an Xbox One X and a PS4 Pro, I should be buying multi-platform games that don't come to PC on Xbox One, because they should, in theory, work a lot better and have a better controller. Let me give you a quick perfect example. Kingdom Hearts 3 should be coming out next year. The game currently has no announced PC version, so I should be able to play it in its best form on Xbox One X. That of course could change, and then it comes to the whole exclusive side of it too. There's a multitude of games from both first and third party that only come out on one specific console. Persona 5, for example, only came out on PS4. I mean, sure, it came out on PS3, but I'm talking about the current lineup of consoles. So it didn't come out on Xbox, so I couldn't have bought it on that. It didn't come out on Switch, so I couldn't have bought it on that. And it didn't come out on PC, so I didn't buy it on that. And the same goes with Nintendo. When stuff comes out that's limited specifically to Nintendo consoles, if it's something I want to play, I'll get it on the Switch. I don't like to miss out on games that I want to play and that I like the look of, just because they're on a certain piece of hardware. If I have the hardware and I want the game, I'll play it. But I do prefer to get the best experience out of it, be it better graphics, better resolution, and especially better frame rate. Oh, and on the regular, I buy a lot of Nintendo 3DS games because, well, even though the 3DS is extremely dated hardware even before it came out, let alone 6 or 7 years later, it still has some high quality games. And again, because I want to play them, I played them on the 3DS. If Sony or any of the other companies would actually make a Vita game I want to play, I would play it on a Vita too. But usually they don't. And last up, we've got a bunch of questions from Flagship Fighter. So the first one he's got here is actually a really interesting one. And it's, if I was to teach video games, what 5 modules would I put on the syllabus? So this one actually took me a little while to think about because it's a very broad and deep question with so many right and wrong answers. Or there's not even really right or wrong answers because it's all a matter of opinion. Granted, my opinion is best opinion, but still. So if I was to teach video games, the first thing, or at least one of the first modules I would definitely put on there, is video game history. Understand where it came from, how it started, what it started with, and how it progressed. What shook up the industry, why did it shake up the industry, and what failed, why it failed, what flopped, etc, etc. The trends and changes as everything went along, the both positive and negative ones. But regardless, it's still very important to actually know. Many people think video game history, so what, you're just going to show them a bunch of Commodore 64 and NES games? That's not the case. It's much more far-reaching than that. I think the second one I'd do would be psychology, not just specifically gaming psychology, because I don't know if that can even be fair, but it's more so how psychology can be used in game design, in basically every facet of game design, to enhance the player's immersion in the game, to enhance their experience in the world, the believability of the world, and of course, in relation to every specific thing down to the individual game. I'd also teach a class called Engaging the Player, because there are so many different narrative tools and all out there and ways to get people invested in a game and how to engage them in a game. I want to go through all of those as much as possible, to go through the positives, the negatives of each individual one, different theories on them, which people find more effective, which people find less effective, because when done properly, when the player is engaged and immersed and involved, you can get situations and reactions in a world or a game or a situation that you never expected whatsoever. And that really surprises players and leaves them with a memorable, long-lasting, positive impression of the game and of the game design. And speaking of game design, the next one will be designing your world, because there are so many different ways to design a game world, even in the same style and the same genre. I mean, hell, look at all the early Final Fantasy games that basically have the same setting, but aren't the same in any way, shape or form. They all kind of have a high fantasy setting. Some of the early ones have a very minor Magitech influence. Granted, that goes kind of higher later on. Like, look at Final Fantasy VII, for example. You still have your villages and all that, but of course you've got your big industrial steampunk era, and you've got Midgar, you've got Junin, and then compared to somewhere like Kam or Nibelheim, you can see the massive difference. One of the big reasons why I wanted to actually bring in the designing your world thing is look at Chrono Trigger. It's got one of the most varied worlds going, for the simple reason is it's got so many very different time periods, and even the same place in different eras can be vastly different. That's one of the many reasons I wanted to put that one in there. If you can tailor a world specific to your needs, you can focus on what makes it believable, what makes it engaging, and what makes it a perfect fit. Great example to use of this would be Shenmue 1 and 2, or even more recently, Persona 5. Hell, any of the Persona games. And this one, for my last 5th module, it kind of ties back to mostly the first one, video game history, but also it's more of a standalone thing itself too. And that's what makes a game great. What makes the music great, what makes the characters great, what makes the battle systems great, the music, whatever. Is every single facet has to be examined. And we have to look at why, how, and what makes it great. For example, I could sit here making a 45-minute video just talking about the world of Secret of Mana. Not the characters, not the weapons, not the enemies, not the story, not the anything. I could literally make videos, probably for hours, specifically talking about why I think the world of Secret of Mana is so amazing. And that can factor in for almost any game. And when you bring different people from different genres, different areas, different whatever, and you can compare what they say, be it positive comparisons, negative comparisons, they're still giving you a huge contrast of what people with varying tastes think is good and why. Because let's face it, when someone goes out to develop a game, they want to make a great game. They don't sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to put my heart and soul into creating this game and it'll be an okay game. They want to make the next Minecraft. They want to make the next Final Fantasy. They want to make the next Stardew Valley. No one sets out to make the next ukulele. So next up, do I think Ireland's GameStop price extortion on games will one day cease to exist? If so, or if not, what would it take for them to be price competitive like England, aka Amazon, and how soon could it happen? Well, GameStop here in Ireland has actually been in a pretty serious decline over the last couple of years, especially in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. Their profits have been dropping by significant amounts. I'm talking like 40 and 60%. Now granted, they still make a decent amount of money, and when I was still working there was still talk of them closing down about 25% of their stores, at least here in Ireland. Now the catch on that one is that so many of the GameStop Ireland stores have huge leases on them. So when they opened them, they said, yeah, we'll take this building real cheap for 25 years. So granted, some of the stores might not actually close for 5-10 years, if they even last that long. But in a country with about 55 stores or so, looking to shut down about a quarter of them is a pretty big deal. And over the last couple of years as well, they've pulled back their kind of focus on games, which is kind of funny considering that they're called GameStop. And they've really broadened their focus on loot, which is basically like collectibles and stuff. T-shirts, pop vinyl figures, trading cards, etc, etc. Because those are still pretty popular, and there's a much better profit margin in. And of course, when it comes to profit margin, there's the whole pre-owned games thing. But nowadays, with digital sales, I mean, hell, when you look at the price of a digital game, it's a little bit cheaper usually than a brand new one. And that has had a serious impact on GameStop in this generation of consoles with the Xbox One and the PS4. I don't know how the Switch was doing. I didn't work there when the Switch came out, but they're hurting bad, and they're definitely feeling a lot on the digital side of it. The biggest problem and the biggest thing that does keep them from being completely competitive is that GameStop in Ireland basically have a monopoly. There's so few other places that actually sell brand new games. Sure, you can go into a supermarket like Tesco over here, for example, and they will have a very, very small game section. They don't get every game. They get usually just the big ones or just some random ones. And a lot of the time when they do get them, they sell them real cheap just to get people into the store, and they don't replenish them. Movie and game rental stores have gone the way of the dodo. They were one of the few places that would also sell games. But really, other than that, there's only one or two kinds of toy stores, and even then, they're not even competitive really, because yeah, they sell them, they replenish them, but they're the same kind of price as GameStop. But I do still think, having said all that GameStop will be in some serious, proper public trouble over the next couple of years here in Ireland. So moving on to the next one. What heinous deeds would I do or commit to get Shenmue HD? And do I think the PSX event holds the answer? I would love if the PSX event did hold the answer, because I believe that's in December. And then we'd finally have a release date, confirmation, list of features, graphical quality, etc, etc. And that would be good to know, because I'd know exactly when it was coming out and when to look forward to it. And what heinous deeds would I do or commit to get Shenmue HD? Well, as everyone who's a long-time viewer and fan will already know, I don't make money on YouTube. I don't do this for money. I don't put ads on this stuff. If there's ads on videos, it's not because of me, it's because of claims. And I don't do paid advertisements or anything like that, sponsored videos. But if it meant getting Shenmue HD, one of the most heinous things I could do and would do a sponsored video promoting Shenmue HD. And that's basically an affront to myself. There's no point in me going saying, oh, I'd go out and, murder 100 people in their sleep, because realistically I wouldn't. But I would consider doing a sponsored video a heinous act, because it's not what I do. But if it meant getting Shenmue HD, I would do a sponsored video for Sega. Hint, hint, Sega, hint, hint. They wouldn't even have to pay me, just give me a free copy of it. I will play it for hundreds of hours. I will say and do whatever you want. You get full creative control, but I would do it. Now, moving on, we've got my favorite license or guilty pleasure game. Well, my favorite license is too big to actually pick. I mean, I could realistically say the Mana series or the Suikoden Densetsu series, because that has my favorite game of all time in its Secret of Mana. And the sequel, Secret of Mana 2 or Suikoden Densetsu 3, is also an amazing game, which is one of the best games ever made also. I know there's a few others. There was obviously the prequel, kind of the precursor game on the Game Boy, and there is a few sequels after, like Legend of Mana and Sword of Mana and Children of Mana, World of Mana, etc, etc. But I'd want to take in the entire series and the quality of everything in the series, or at least the majority of it, when I say favorite license. I can't give a proper answer to the license one. There's just so many series that I deeply love and enjoy across all different genres. I mean, that's like asking me to choose between Mario, Sonic, Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, Secret of Mana, Halo, Gears of War, Valkyria Chronicles, Silent Hill, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Mega Man, Persona, Breath of Fire, Shenmue, Phantasy Star. I mean, you see my point. It can just go on, and it wouldn't be fair. I wouldn't be able to eliminate stuff, so I'll just leave that one there as it is. My favorite guilty pleasure game, I kind of have two when it comes down to it. I'm obviously a huge Resident Evil fan, and Resident Evil 5 is pretty much hated by many people. Personally, I always considered Resident Evil 5 one of my guilty pleasure games. For the simple reason is, while it may not be a very good Resident Evil game, it's actually a good, fun, enjoyable third-person shooter game, especially if you play it co-op. I mean, I have a ridiculous amount of time in that, and I've played it multiple times on both platforms, 360 and PC, and I've dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of hours each, including being #1 in the world for about 2 weeks on one of the DLCs in the top score, at least on the 360 version. And that is one of my biggest guilty pleasure games. The other one, which is more universally hated, is Mission Impossible on Nintendo 64. At least for Mission Impossible, I know it's a bad game, but it's still a little bit of a guilty pleasure just to play. I even rebought it a few months ago on N64. But when you compare that to Resident Evil 5, I don't think Resident Evil 5 is actually a bad game. But I do think that Mission Impossible is a bad game. It was just one of those things where as a kid, you rented it for like a week or so and you were stuck with it. So I made the best of it and I kind of got hooked and addicted to it. But at least I can still tell why it's bad in so many ways. So my favorite console from an aesthetical point of view or design perspective. I have a really weird design perspective, or whatever way you want to word it. I'm really weird when it comes down to this. I would most likely say it's the Super Nintendo. The European Super Nintendo or the Japanese Super Famicom, they look the same. Not that horrible US NTSC boxy purple tank kind of thing. Well, grey and purple tank. Not that thing. That thing is horrible. But possibly the PAL Super Nintendo, or, believe it or not, the OG Xbox One. It's big, it's boxy, it looks like something straight out of the 80s. I absolutely love it. I do really, really like the Dreamcast as well. But other than that, everything else is just kind of meh. So next up he's asking, what do next-gen consoles need to have and focus on? So I'm assuming you mean the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One rather than the PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2. But what they need to do is they need to properly work within their limits. And they need to focus on getting stuff done better. What I mean by that is mostly in the likes of, say, frame rate. Frame rate is very, very, very important for action-based games and things of the like. First-person shooters, third-person shooters, real-time strategies, racing games. Hell, basically anything that's not a turn-based strategy game needs to be 60 FPS. Granted, even in a turn-based strategy game or even a turn-based role-playing game, 60 FPS would be a boon, but it's not going to affect gameplay. Because despite what everyone else tells you, yes, 60 frames per second in any game that requires live action inputs and reaction times does affect gameplay. It's not just first-person shooters. And a lot of not so much the consoles, but this one more so goes into the developers because they have to work with consoles. Obviously the consoles are considerably weaker even when they first launch, and a lot of developers and publishers need to step their games up. ID Software, for example, did fantastic work with Doom. Naughty Dog looks like they're doing fantastic work with The Last of Us Part 2. And as much as it kills me to say it, DICE did a great job with Battlefield 1 from a visual perspective. But that's about it really. When you look at all the other companies and studios and developers and all out there, when you can only list maybe 3 different companies out of the dozens, if not hundreds, everyone else needs to step their game up and get good, basically. But last up, I'll just finish that little particular question out with companies need to have games. The consoles need to have games. Microsoft is doing very poorly in that aspect of it. Nintendo isn't far behind when it comes to it, because their whole power and design philosophy is biting them in the arse and hindering them to an extent. But Sony is killing it on that front. Sony have the games. They have the first-party games, they have the multi-plat games, and they have third-party exclusive games for the most part too. I'm just going to use Persona 5 as a perfect example. One of the greatest received games of all time, released now in 2017 in the West, because I know someone's going to say, oh, but it released in 2016 in the East. And that's only on PS3 and PS4. Let's look at the upcoming Shenmue 3, PS4 and PC. No mention of Switch or Xbox One. And realistically, timed exclusives notwithstanding, how many third-party exclusive games do you see only on Xbox One? Exactly. Also asking if I have any plans for other upcoming videos when the likes of maybe top 15 games of all time or of 2017 or best and worst of. I kind of suck on those types of videos, unfortunately. I could do something along the lines of top 15 games of all time or top 10 or 20 games of all time, top 10 platformers of all time or something like that. That one I couldn't do, or that one I couldn't have too much trouble with. But when narrowing it down to a specific year for say best and worst of, I think I do really poorly. I mean, I was kind of happy with, I think it was my 2016 one, possibly even my 2015 one, which had my own personal game of the year, what I considered the biggest flop of the year and worst game of the year. I say flop, I don't mean as in like sales flop or anything, but what they promised and what they delivered and what it actually turned out to be. I think I used Metal Gear Solid 5 as my example. That game is absolutely fucking trash. It promised the world after Ground Zeroes. Ground Zeroes was amazing, and after playing Ground Zeroes multiple times, I was expecting the world from the full game, and the full game was pure shite. And then just as another comparison, I think it was my 2016 video, where there was the one with, I had The Division as like my biggest flop of the year. Or biggest disappointment or whatever it was. Granted, I had zero expectations for that game and I thought it looked awful, but you get the point. And the final question for the entire video, still on Flagship Fighter's list here. Thoughts on sparkling water and or pineapple on pizza? Well, first off, sparkling water is like bubbling chemical sewage water. Absolutely disgusting. And as for pineapple on pizza, and if you like pineapple on your pizza, don't even bother unsubscribing to my channel. Just do everyone a favor. It'll be quicker and easier in the long run, and just unsubscribe to life. So that's it, everyone. Holy shit, this video has gone on way longer than I anticipated. But damn, was it fun. I'll say that much. So I hope it gave you a bit of an insight into whatever questions you asked, or whatever questions other people asked that you maybe didn't think of, or whatever it is. I know I got a little bit rambly on some of the answers, but hell, I'm just so passionate about the stuff that you guys asked me that it just kind of went on a little bit longer. And like I probably said in some of the answers, I could go on even more, but it turns out the video was probably already too long anyway. So I don't even know what to do for an outro to this. Leave anything you want in the comments section below. And who knows, maybe in 6 months or a year from now or whenever it is, maybe I'll do another one of these. But that's it. Once again, thank every single one of you for watching whatever it is you're watching, whatever reason you're here for leaving me questions, whatever. Thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.